Hello and welcome to Professor Penn's Pony Perusal program, and I'm your host, Professor Penn. Today we will be looking at episode 6 of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, entitled Boast Busters. Oh, sorry, wrong show. Now for the actual show, we get back to cold openings that serve a purpose, namely Twilight practicing a new spell.
Ha-ha! You did it! Growing magic. That's number 25.
And considering that most unicorns only know about 2 or 3 spells, 25 is indeed quite impressive. However, what I don't get is the fact that Twilight insists that it's just for practice, and thus she has to get rid of the mustache. I mean, it's not like there's some situation in which mustache use is required, so what's the alternative to practice? Now in the episode proper, we get to enjoy Spike gushing over Twilight and her obvious magical talent.
True, for ponies whose talents are for things like cooking or singing or math. But what if a unicorn's special talent is magic?
Like you, Twilight, and you know a ton of magic.
A touch exposition-y, but I've heard worse. We also get introduced to 2 young foals, Snips and Snails, who are simply gushing over the traveling unicorn that just came into town. You know, this is actually a very interesting premise. Even though magic is commonplace, it has varying levels of skill, so it makes sense that some would use it as a form of performance art. Now, I'm going to let you watch the entirety of this particular scene because it so flawlessly encapsulates pretty much the entire message of this episode.
There's nothing wrong with being talented, is there?
Nothing at all. Except when someone goes around showing it off like a school filly with fancy new ribbons.
Just because one has the ability to perform lots of magic does not make one better than the rest of us.
Especially when you got me around being better than the rest of us.
Magic's magic. Boo!
Okay, there's actually a lot going on there, so let's take a moment to look over some of the parts. First, the reaction of Rarity and Applejack. Now, this might seem like a violation of show don't tell, but the point is not to show the reaction of Trixie to the audience, but to show it to Twilight, who interprets it to mean that they have an issue with somebody displaying a talent for magic. This is confirmed when she explains to Spike this is precisely her reason.
I don't want anyone thinking I'm a show-off.
This avoids the usual problems with exposition, because it would make sense that Spike would not understand why Twilight is so reluctant to show off her talent. The reason why is that she is still new to the whole friend thing, and does not understand the difference between taking pride in your abilities and being an arrogant, boastful individual. Also, that can be a very fine line, as we can see with Rainbow Dash. Fed up with all of her bragging, Applejack, Rainbow Dash, and Rarity show off their own skills. However, the great and powerful Trixie does not respond by merely duplicating their own talents, instead opting to humiliate them. This could also imply that she put some thought into these retaliations, as a way to discourage other people from challenging what she's saying. Also, for some reason, we hear Rarity referring to herself in the third person.
I take your hint, but Rarity is above such nonsense. Rainbow Dash and Applejack may behave like ruffians, but Rarity conducts herself with beauty and grace.
My guess this was probably Rarity intentionally trying to mock Trixie and her tendency to always refer to herself in the third person, since this is pretty much the first and, to my knowledge, only time which Rarity does this. After all this, Spike continued to try and pressure Twilight into showing Trixie her own magical skills, which in the end simply resulted in Twilight running away.
Well, come on. Show Trixie what you've got. Show us all.
Who, me? I'm just your run-of-the-mill citizen of Ponyville. No powerful magic here. I think I hear my laundry calling. Sorry, gotta go.
Twilight?
While Twilight sulks, Snips and Snails, enamored by Trixie's claims of defeating
The dreaded Ursa Major!
become her loyal fanboys. However, Spike points something out.
Were you guys actually there?
Well, no, but
nothing. The proof is in the pudding.
I like pudding. Look, unless an Ursa Major comes waltzing up the street for Trixie to vanquish, I am not gonna believe a word she says. And neither should you.
An Ursa walking up the street, hey? Snails, you thinking what I'm thinking?
Okay, Spike, I can understand making the mistake of telling them this, but they're talking about this right in front of you. It's quite obvious that these two are not exactly the sharpest tools in the shed, and you should know what they're about to do. So the proper thing to do would be to tell someone.
Twilight, won't you put down that book and just listen to me?
What's this? Does Spike actually figure this out and went to go warn Twilight?
Didn't you see how they hated Trixie's bragging, Spike? If I go out there and show off my magic, I run the risk of losing them as friends.
No, Twilight. See, he's actually trying to warn you that Snips and Snails are going to go and look for an Ursa Major in order to show that Trixie isn't a fraud.
It's not the same thing, Twilight. You'd be using your magic to stand up for your friends.
No, Spike, it's exactly the same.
Come on, Twilight. Any one of these tricks, even the teeniest, would be enough to show up Trixie.
Or he can still be going on about having her show up Trixie. Sure, let's go with that. Meanwhile, Snips and Snails are finding the Ursa Major. They of course find one, and while fleeing for their lives, they run across Spike. Thus, they run off to warn Trixie, while Spike goes to warn Twilight. Now, to Trixie's credit, she does try to defeat the Ursa Major.
Piece of cake.
Though it doesn't go too well. The Ursa Major is simply too large for any of her tricks to have much of an effect. So after her attempts fail, the Ursa Major then goes on its own little rampage through town.
What's going on?
We brought an Ursa to town!
You...
Again, they really should have seen this coming.
Well, Trixie will vanquish it.
I can't.
What?
Oh, I can't. I never have. No one can vanquish an Ursa Major. I just made the whole story up to make me look better.
Okay, now you know you are in trouble when Trixie starts referring to herself in the first person. So with the threat of impending death, finally Twilight steps up and tries to deal with the problem. Now you might ask, how exactly does Twilight defeat something which is basically undefeatable? With soothing music, a water tower full of milk, and being rocked gently to sleep. Finally, levitating the sleeping Ursa back into its cave. Thus, everyone praises Twilight for her great magical talent, and she finally learns that being able to use magic doesn't mean your friends will hate you. Being loud, obnoxious, and never shutting up about how great you are will make your friends hate you. And we learned something new as well.
That's what I was doing when you came looking for me. I was so intrigued by Trixie's bragging that I was compelled to do a little reading up on them.
So it is possible to vanquish an Ursa Major all by herself?
That wasn't an Ursa Major. It was a baby. An Ursa Minor.
Oh, of course, it was an Ursa Minor, not... Wait a second. 4 stars in its tail? That's clearly supposed to be an Ursa Major. What a horribly missed opportunity. For one, this would be a great hint to those that actually know about the constellations that something wasn't quite right with them. The other thing is it would make perfect sense that as it got older, it would develop a longer tail and thus would get the additional star. And of course the worst offense is the fact that this might misinform people and make them think that the Ursa Minor has 4 stars within its tail. Forget it, let's just wrap things up. Twilight learns that it's okay to be prideful as long as you don't shove it into everyone's face. Trixie leaves town. And Snips and Snails are properly punished for endangering every pony's lives by giving them awesome mustache. You don't forget, just roll the credits.
I'm Trixie, welcome to the show. I got magic tricks, so here we go. We're gonna have some fun, hold on to your hats.
We don't care who you are anymore, just pack your
Now where's Derpy? There she is.